My name is Dietmar Dörschlag, and I'm a certified Atlassian business consultant with Valiantis. And we are the largest global platinum solution partner focused on the Atlassian ecosystem. Thank you so much for joining me today. This video is part of a multi-part video series where we focus on the topic of Atlassian administration roles. This is a very important topic. There is a lot to digest. Sometimes understanding Atlassian administration roles, what they do, can be rather complicated. And the purpose of this video is to focus specifically on the Jira Project Administration role. Now, in a previous video, we noted that Atlassian products hardly ever live on their own. They really come within a wider Atlassian ecosystem. Jira, for example, is very often used uh, in parallel with Confluence, where shared knowledge is created. Jira is very often also used together with Jira Service Management to handle both the dev side and the ops side in IT. Very often Jira is used together with Bamboo and Fisheye or Jira Product Discovery to support other teams collaborating with teams who work in Jira. We noted that with respect to organization roles, there are really three different layers in Jira and in Confluence and in Jira Service Management for that matter. In another video, we covered the purpose and the role of org admins, organizational admins in detail. Please look for that video in this video series. We noted that org admins are very important and have the most power in the Atlassian ecosystem. We also talked about the role of product admins, namely Jira and JSM admins and Confluence admins, who have a very important role to play with respect to administering those three products. And lastly, which is the purpose of this video, we're going to talk about the role of project admins, specifically focused on Jira Project Administration. Now, this slide highlights again the hierarchy. At the top of the Atlassian admin role hierarchy are the org admins. They manage users, they manage groups, they're responsible to manage products, licensing and billing for products. They also manage and configure organization-wide settings that have pretty wide-reaching implications, such as security, site settings, and of course, they're responsible for licensing. Now, the focus of this video is the role of Jira project administrators. What do those roles do? Well, specifically, they would be creating new projects, but they can only create new projects if those projects are team managed projects. They're not allowed to create company managed projects. We're going to talk about the difference in a minute, because company managed projects can only be created by Jira administrators, not by project admins. Primarily, the role of project leads or project admins is to manage the project team, which of course involves the onboarding, the joining of their team members into the project based on predefined project roles, which the Jira administrator has created, which of course controls the permissions, what those project team members can do and cannot do in a particular project. Project administrator's role really is to manage project settings that are specific to that particular project. And that includes the creation of versions and components, which are always project specific. They're not shared with other projects. And they can also manage project details, such as changing the project name, changing the project key, changing the URL. They manage issue lists. They can configure issue lists with columns and other details to support their respective project teams in getting the work done. They can also create and maintain automation rules, but those rules need to be scoped only to that particular project. If those rules transcend the scope of a particular project, they cannot do that, and that is reserved for Jira admins only. Yes, they do manage boards, although they can delegate the responsibility of maintaining, managing boards to separate roles, which would be board administrators. They do create reports and dashboards, share them with other team members or with non-project team members. They do manage sprints if they happen to oversee a Scrum type project. And they can also manage bulk operations. So with that, let's dive into Jira and talk about those concepts in greater detail. Now I am now accessing a Jira organization that I spun up, and I'm looking at the project list. So in this particular instance, there are a number of projects that we created. We have a sample Scrum project with data in it, a sample Kanban project with data in it. Yes, we also have an ITSM sample project. The focus of the JSM project admin is the subject of another video. Please check out our playlist for that. And we also created a team managed project. Now, it's really important to emphasize the difference between a team managed project and a company managed project before we look at the details. Now, whether or not a team managed project, which is a construct in Jira that gives the team a lot of autonomy, essentially the person who administers a team managed project can change the settings in that project on their own without requiring the assistance from a Jira admin, and the settings will not be shared with any other project. Whether or not team managed projects can even be created or allowed in your Jira instance is controlled through a global setting. So let's move into global permissions. And in global permissions, we do have a setting here, which is the ability to create a team managed project. So we see here create team managed projects is granted to members of a specific group, and it is the Jira admin or the org admin who grants that specific permission. So in other words, a Jira or org admin can disallow the creation of team managed projects. Now we at Valiantes want to really caution you, use team managed projects very cautiously. Yes, they do have their place. That's why Atlassian created them. They allow certain autonomy for teams, but they can, if not managed wisely, also create a lot of chaos because you could end up in a situation where every team works very differently and autonomy then really comes at the expense of lack of process standards. So we want to really caution on the use of team managed projects. Now, let's go back into our project list. So here we have a number of projects, and I want to start with the Kanban sample project. So let's look at what a project admin can do in that Kanban project. So let's look at the navigation bar here on the right, on the left. So first of all, the project admin can create components. Now, components are, of course, used for many things. They're used through JQL for reporting purposes, but they are probably most well known to auto-assign issues via the concept of component leads. So it is the project admin who would create components, identifies component leads, and would then use component leads to auto-assign issues to component leads. Now, this is very handy if you work in a larger project where you have maybe different work streams, could maybe even be a program where you use the concept of components to assign issues automatically to work package leads. So this is the responsibility of the project lead, project administrator, to maintain, set up, and maintain those components. Secondly, if we move down to project settings real quick. Now, project settings, we have the detail button. In the detail screen, yes, those settings can be controlled by the project administrator. For example, the project admin could change project name and project key. If you change the project key, the project has to be re-indexed, so be very cautious about that. They can yes, change the project lead. If a project manager moves off a particular project, um, obviously the project lead needs to be swapped out. So this can be done by project admins and does not require a Jira admin. And they can also change the default assignee. So all the controls in here, all the settings are controlled by the project administrator. However, if we look at the summary screen, in the summary screen, in a company managed project, all those settings are reserved to be administered by the Jira administrator. The project admin is not allowed to swap out and change any schemes on a company managed project. And this is due to the importance of ensuring process standards. It is not allowed by a project admin to go into a project and swap out, for example, what screens, what workflows, what issue types would be used, the behavior of fields through field configurations. All of this is really reserved to the um, Jira admin. And the Jira admin, if those changes have to take place, of course, would work in collaboration with the project admin, but the project admin is not allowed to do that. Now, one important aspect of what the project admin does is reports. So if we go back to the navigation bar on the left, we look at reports. There are, of course, a number of reports built into Jira. The scope of this video is not focusing on reports in detail, but suffice to say there are many built-in reports in Jira, both for Kanban and Scrum projects, and those reports can be set up and shared by the project admin. Those reports include Kanban reports, Scrum reports, issue analysis reports. They all have the purpose, and it is the responsibility of the project admin to set up those reports and, yes, ensure that those reports have meaningful data to support decision making. If we navigate back to the project and look at the issue lists, now those lists, of course, can be customized. There can be through the setup of this list, you can add columns, you can manage what issues are being displayed through JQL syntaxes. So all of this can be done and controlled by the project admin because it's the responsibility of the project admin, which very often is the project manager, to ensure that the team can collaborate to get work done. So the managing of project lists through filters, JQL statements, syntaxes, what columns are displayed, is the responsibility of the project admin. Also, the project admin can handle bulk operations. So they can move issues to another project. They can bulk update issues, let's say uh, bulk updates to the assignee or a version number, whatever it is. So those changes are typically performed by a project admin through bulk operations. Now, one important aspect that we also need to cover is the onboarding of team members. So navigating back here to project settings and then going to people. Now, in the People's tab, this is where project team members will be onboarded, joining that particular project by the project administrator. And they onboard people based on defined roles that were defined by Jira administrators. Those roles are referenced, mapped into permission schemes, which then determine what permissions those role members have in that particular project. So to summarize, it's the Jira administrator who creates a project, unless it is a team managed project. It's the Jira administrator who defines roles, who creates permission schemes and maps those permissions for those roles, references that permission scheme on a project, and it is then the role of the project admin to add people based on those roles into the project. So in raw reality, a project team member would have three people, a QA analyst, a software developer, a Scrum Master, added to their respective project. But what those individuals are allowed to do and not allowed to do in that particular project was already defined via the concept of roles and the definition of permission schemes that are mapped to the project by the Jira administrator. Now, to wrap this up, there's one important concept that we still need to cover, and that is a team-managed project. So going back to the project list, we're looking at the project list and we're pulling up a team-managed project. So as I said earlier, whether or not you are allowed to create a team-managed project in your Jira instance is controlled via global permission. And that global permission is set by either the Jira admin or is set by the org admin. So when a Jira or org admin allows the creation of a team managed project, um, anyone can create a team managed project that is a member of that group that was granted that global permission to create team managed projects. And we really recommend that this is tightly locked down and controlled because that can really create a lot of governance chaos. So if you allow people to create team managed projects, they can go in and they can spin up a project, which is then in a very autonomous way managed by themselves, which means that they can, yes, through project settings, they can set up issue types. They can set up notifications. Um, for each issue type, they can define what screen is used and what workflow, the behavior of a workflow for each issue type. But it's important to note that those settings would then only apply to that particular team managed project and are not shared with any other project. So the administration of a team managed project with respect to all those settings is autonomously done by project admins in that team managed project, which of course could have its value, but you need to be aware that the team would then work autonomously and could work very differently from another team that uses another setup in a different team managed project or a company managed project. And as you are probably aware, the functionality in a team managed project is not as rich as in a company managed project. For example, to call out one difference, in a team managed project, you cannot use post functions in the workflow, which of course are available in the very powerful concept in a company managed project. The last point I'd like to make is the topic of automations. Um, Yes, it is the role of a project administrator to create automations. It needs to be pointed out, though, that those automations can only be created by a project admin if the scope of that project rule is limited to that particular project. As soon as the automation rule scope is expanded beyond that one particular project, that obviously cannot be done by that project admin. It needs to be done by a Jira admin because the scope is changed to be global or including not only one but multiple projects. Now, if the scope is limited to one particular project, that project admin can build the automation rules for that project exactly the same way as the Jira admin could do it for multiple projects or the global scale. There's then really no difference. If we're moving over to a Scrum project to close this topic out, in a Scrum project, the project admin would also manage sprints. Of course, they can be delegated to a particular role, to the role of a Scrum Master, for example, but quite often the project admin would also create sprints and would manage those sprints. But it really depends on your organizational setup in your teams in a respective project. With respect to boards, now boards are very often administered by project administrators. A project admin can create boards. They can um, configure boards, for example, change the underpinning JQL filter that determines what data is shown on the board. But it's important to emphasize that boards, the configuration, the management of boards could also be delegated specifically to a board administrator. So that really, again, depends on how you're organized in your specific organization, how big you are. Certainly, there are reasons why the function of a board admin and a Jira project admin are separate. Now that brings me to the end of this video. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found this information presented in this video helpful and of value to you. To summarize, the role of the Jira project administrator is very important. They are closest to the end users who use Jira in their particular project setting, so their role is really, really important. But they always work in close cooperation with both the Jira administrator and, of course, the organizational administrator. And they all work together for the good of the end users to make sure that their respective project teams are empowered to collaborate and to get work done. Um, if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach me at dietmar.dörschlag@valiantis.com. I also encourage you to always check out our YouTube channel where we constantly post new content as we are dedicated to the Atlassian ecosystem. Thank you so much and have a great day.